So you're dealing with shoulder issues. I'm gonna walk you through the protocol I did with this guy who might possibly have the worst shoulders that I've ever worked with. We're gonna start from the spine and work our way out. So let's go right to that cat camel, DJ. He's in this quadruped position here, and all I want him to think about is getting as much movement through the spine as possible. So he's gonna go into this big flex wave of the spine, and then from here he's gonna slowly drop in and get extension. He's trying to get as much movement out of his pelvis, the good movement between the pelvis and the lower back, and then he's gonna go right back up, walking his way up that spine, pushing through the floor, letting his scaps move around his rib cage. But before we go right into that shoulder, we wanna make sure we're getting a good movement out of that spine. So give me one more rep, DJ. Nice and smooth, going through these big flexion extension waves of the spine, big high reach, nice push through the floor, let those scaps contour around the rib cage. Money. Pretty vanilla exercise, basic movement. Many of you guys have probably already done it. So what we like to do is have an offset position where we have a little bit of rotation. So DJ, go to that offset cat camel next. Left hand a little bit further out in front. There you go, money. From here, you'll notice if you're looking from the above, his right side of his body is more compressed, his left side is more extended, and now when he goes through that same flexion and extension wave of his spine, he's gonna have a little bit of rotation, leaning off, opening up this side, creating some workspace, and then going right back down into that extended spine position, just pushing through the floor, having that excursion of the spine laterally, just kind of addressing some attention before we go directly on that shoulder. We wanna make sure we have good movement of the spine, good movement of the scaps. We don't want to overlook that area and jump right to the shoulders. Let's get one more rep of that, DJ. What are you cueing when you're pushing through the floor here?
Feel a little bit of tension on my left-hand side, so as I go to extend, I kind of just feel wherever that tightness is, and I try to exhale and lean into it, add just a little bit more pressure, a little more tension, just kind of explore those little bits of movements. Right when I get to a safe spot, I'll feel it bind up just a little bit, and I'll just ever so slightly just lean my weight into it more just to help kind of stretch out that tissue.
DJ mentioned a good point there, exhaling through a range of motion. If we get to a sticking point or we're kind of stuck, exhale, relax yourself, breathe. You might find that range of motion gets to increase, or maybe the tension that you're dealing with starts to loosen up just a little bit. All right, from here, let's go through a needle through, DJ. Let's go left arm through. So now we're just gonna add more rotation. We started out pretty standard with the cat camel, adding that offset, adding rotation. Now we're gonna go even further in. DJ's gonna take his left arm through this, threading the needle, and he's gonna push his right arm through the floor, opening up, taking it straight to the ceiling. Loading in, loading this musculature around the scap, pushing through the floor, opening up, just adding rotation to that spine, making sure we're freeing up all this tissue and starting from a good starting point that's not rigid and just jumping right to the shoulder. We want to start from the spine and work our way out. Let's get 2 more reps, pushing through the floor, opening up. 1 more, loading in. I've even seen DJ kind of get a little bit of a stretch, pushing into the floor with his right hand, and then from here, pushing up, moving. Beautiful.
I actually like to add a little bit of pressure with my opposite hand as I'm going to thread it through. If you watch my hand, I start fingers pointed up. I keep that thumb down low, keep my elbow in alignment. When I get it to here, I rotate my palm up, and then I push that hand into the floor. Gives a little bit of traction back in my rear delt, my scapular area. And I feel that's a really good safe spot for me to be. So if I put that pressure down and I lean back into it a little bit, and then I rotate this shoulder out, that's about as max stretch as I can get. I can feel it bind up my lat, starting to release a little bit, and then I just release it. Now I push this hand into the floor, be as rigid as possible, and then open it back up. I feel like every time I do that, I use my fingers as a reference point. I'll pick a spot where they are, I'll thread it through again, and I'll just try to gain an inch. Just exhale, exhale, get an inch and a half, reset. Every time just trying to expand that tissue just a little bit more, but safe and under control.
Yeah. Slight resistance that DJ's applying there with the floor. Now we're gonna increase that resistance more with the band. Continuing loading that rotation, this time we're gonna be from the split stance setup. DJ's gonna use a band that he has about shoulder width apart from his hands, and from here he's gonna rotate, loading that rotation with the band, reaching up to the ceiling. We're not reaching behind us, we're loading straight up to the ceiling, and basically at the top end of this movement, I'm trying to take my scaps and push them together. So we have this big lengthening position here, letting the scaps move around that rib cage, simultaneous rotating up to the ceiling, scaps come together, locked in, finish up, knuckles to the ceiling, Hold that for a pause and then slowly release, letting the scaps go around, loading rotation of the spine using a band as seen here. I really love this setup as well for the lower back because being in the split stance setup is not going to allow us to donate much mobility to the cause here. It's really going to allow him to isolate the rotation that's occurring from the mid to upper back with the band. Push through the floor, loading that rotation up to the ceiling, stacking those scaps on the back, controlling that movement right back down to the ground. Now that we got that spine movement, we got the scaps moving, we loaded rotation of those scaps. Now let's work our way up to that ball and socket joint of the shoulder. DJ's gonna go with these shoulder airplanes here, alternating arms. He's reaching straight up to the ceiling, taking his time, bringing it back down. His hips move simultaneously with the shoulders, reset his hand, and we're back up. But basically, I'm loading that shoulder joint rotationally, getting that movement of the scaps around the rib cage. This closed chain movement of challenge shoulder mobility is a great way that you can load that tissue safely and effectively, and a great starting point once we got the spine moving to getting those shoulders moving out of pain and building resiliency around that area.
Fellas, kind of like a part two, what I like to do, I'll isolate one side, but I'll really slow down that movement. I'll try to challenge my core, everything in alignment. I'll keep my hand hovering about 1 inch off the deck. You really have your hips in alignment, everything's gotta be simultaneous in nature, but if you watch how close I keep this thing hovering, it's a really good challenge for the core, but it also gives me an isolation component just on a single shoulder. Brace everything, bring my hand up, nice, slow, and controlled, up to the ceiling. Same thing, letting my scap move around, core super tight, reset. Hips are rotating, core is engaged, reset.
I really like this one that DJ presented. We were trying to film a progression of this shoulder movement previously, and he was like, why don't I just do it with one hand and hold the stability aspect, because it kind of correlates with a lot of the other core work we do involving the shoulder and the hips. So this setup is great because it involves all that. I'm creating tension through my torso. I have simultaneous movement of my hips and my shoulder, connecting those dots between the hips and the shoulder, rotating up with that closed chain position, really challenging that ball and socket joint, unlike the alternating sides, on one side at a time, really loading all that tissue around the joint, not allowing my body to have that rest of alternating hands, sitting my hand down to the ground, like DJ said, hovering it slightly off the deck. Continuing to add rotation, we'll combine it with a face pull, simultaneous pulling back. So DJ, we have a band here. This is very important because it allows us to distribute that weight a little bit more continuous and give us a little bit more fluctuation in our hands. Now he's gonna simultaneously go face pull, add external rotation, hold this position, and then let it relinquish right back out. Big thing here is letting the scaps move when we go out, simultaneous face pull, add rotation. Do not lift the ribs here, trying to keep our ribs down. Really just isolate the face pull, upper back, upper trap, posterior delt, add that external rotation, hands up. Make sure we're not dropping our elbows when we pull back, and really trying to go full scarecrow all the way up, money. Finishing off with a little bit more dynamic, these perturbations. This was something big when DJ was getting back into his last skydiving trip, and we had to handle that fluctuations in the air while he was free falling. So this is something we introduced after we did all the other stuff of really building resiliency and durability around that shoulder joint.
For me, really the confidence aspect. It took me a very long time to be able to hang from the bar, and then even extending it, once I get here, I feel like I'm kind of a victim of my own success, and it wasn't really until we got this. Now I can full arm extension, now I can get that movement going back and forth. Every time it goes forward, every time it goes back, just a little more confidence builder, a little more confidence builder. For me, this is an absolute game changer. You guys are suffering from shoulder issues, add this to your daily routine, man. Game changer for me.
Let's show him how we do it. So he's got a higher band kind of around that wrist forearm area. From here, he's reaching up straight to the ceiling. He's in the seated position, so he's not donating too much movement from that lower body. And like DJ said, he's gonna be tight through his core, and he's just gonna bounce back and forth between the front side and back side of this band. So basically, we're just taking that shoulder joint, really, the cues that I've been giving to people, or the sensation they feel, is almost feels like the joint is sucking together. They feel like a lot of blood in that area. They feel a lot of stability. This is something I've done with baseball pitchers, overhead athletes, volleyball players, to build some resiliency and durability, like DJ said, with that shoulder joint, especially coming back from injury, building confidence around that area.
Big thing I try to focus on is not donating mobility from my rib cage, because I'll start to lean back here a little bit, and then I'll start to shorten my stride. So I'll put my hand on my ribs, just try to keep one cue out of Vernon's mouth. I'll just try to keep my ribs down and try to extend and really focus on that index finger, trying to keep it as long as I can and just start the momentum. Yeah, exactly. You said you get a really nice shoulder pump from it, just moving it back and forth. And for the guys that have been neglecting shoulder mobility since your injury, you'll definitely love feeling those.
I also think it puts you in this, a lot of people don't have a good sufficient range of motion overhead, so it kind of allows you to access it and touch it in a safe position that you feel comfort with. I've had guys that don't like being overhead, and something like this, just bouncing back and forth, that rhythm and coordination, it kind of gives them a little bit of feeling of, oh, I can do this, oh, this feels safe, and afterwards they kind of move their shoulder around and be like, oh, my joint feels a little bit more stable, feels a little bit more compact, almost like you're compacting blood in that area, bringing tension to that area so that we can push, pull, whatever it is after this.